Last night I was able to see the new Indian action thriller Animal, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on the film Animal. Now, I went into this movie without any real point of reference. I hadn't even watched the trailer before I saw the film. Several people had messaged me telling me it was coming out and kind of alluded to maybe a little bit of controversy surrounding the film, but I have no real context for what any of that would have been. I didn't really even know the basic genre of the film when it started, so I went in with an entirely fresh perspective. So if you can give kind of some perspective on maybe what some of that controversy was that the people were alluding to, I would appreciate that. And I have done several other reviews of Indian films over the last several years: Three Idiots, RRR, J1, Leo, Tiger 3 last month, and did a couple rankings as well in there. And you can see those in this playlist right up here somewhere. With that said, let's get started. So as I just mentioned, I went into this movie with very little point of reference. I had seen something say that it's one of the longest Indian films ever made, and something else using the word revenge, and that was about it. And so it took me a while to kind of get adjusted to what the film was and the plot was. The first, 30 minutes was a little bit difficult for me to follow. Some of it is because it is kind of skipping back and forth through time, and they pretty radically changed the appearance of our lead character scene to show just kind of different phases of his life. And so, like, he shows up with kind of like long, crazy hair, earring, leather jacket, and he says, "You look like an American," which is kind of a fun, like, feels like a Happy Days version of the Fonz from Happy Days version of an American from like 1950s, a specific look to it, which is kind of, even the cigarettes rolled up in his sleeve is kind of an interesting perspective. Because you had one real distinct look that they gave him, and then they cut to the next scene, and he's dressed nice, shaven. It took me a while to figure out that it was the same person. And then there's another time when it does a time jump cut to the future, and he's got a beard and sunglasses. And so it took me a little while to like fully like track along, because there are just such radical changes in his appearance and these time jumps, and a little bit of just kind of different cultural things about marriage and kind of what engagement means and what it looks like, and some of those things. So just trying to catch on to exactly kind of where we're going with it, and even the way that it structures the kind of the inciting incident, the thing that kicks the plot into motion, which is our lead character returning to get revenge for his father and make everyone pay that would hurt his beloved father. The way that they tell it, since it's so non-linear, it kicks off and it shows you him return in this very shocking, violent fashion, very different from the guy that we just saw, but not out of character from what we've learned about him. So it shows us this event, and it cuts forward a number of years, shows us an event, and then it cuts backwards in time. And so it's just a little bit difficult for me to follow in kind of the setup of everything that was going on. But once I kind of got adjusted to that, and that did take a while, it was a pretty wild ride, because he's such like an extreme character that his passion for his father, who's so distant towards him, is compelling in its own interesting way. His actions are so extreme. Everything that he does is just amplified. And he's so confident in whatever he does and his reasonings, and that he's right. And even as the movie says, he doesn't believe in regrets. He just goes. Or I guess they say his father doesn't believe in regrets, and then they associate that with him too. He just goes so hard for everything. And so it just adds an intensity all the scenarios that take place. So when you get an action sequence, it's going to be a wild, crazy ride. And especially when you get to the one that's at the middle of the movie, right before the intermission, you have this gigantic shootout. And then it's followed up by him being injured, you think it's over with, and then he dukes it out with like, you think it's done, and he goes full weapon melee combat, and you think it's done, and then he pulls out one more piece of tech that is so wild and crazy, and you still think it's done, and it's still not quite done, because all of it is just so intense. I've only seen a limited number of Indian films, but this is the one with the most sexual content to it. It's not the most violent. I've seen one called Kill that hasn't come out yet. I believe it's going to come out next year, and I heard behind the scenes, essentially, they don't want to have to edit the film to get past the censors, and so there's a lot of kind of things going on so that they can release the film in the form that I saw it, that's very violent. And there's just some things blocking that from happening, but this movie Kill already has a deal with a Hollywood distributor to release it in the United States, which is pretty cool. That one was more violent, but otherwise, this was pretty extreme, pretty violent. I went by myself. My wife didn't go see this one. She would not have liked this film because it is just so violent, and our lead character is so vicious, and it just keeps going for it. He's covered in a little blood. Well, let's put a lot more blood on him. And along those same lines, kind of appreciated that he's our lead character is compelling while not being someone you're particularly rooting for. He's not really a good guy, and we know that from the beginning. And there's little things where you can see maybe him softening a little bit, having some understanding, trying to move past things, but he's so broken from his childhood and the way that his father raised him that we're really watching essentially a tragedy, in the sense that you have a character that it's not about them learning, growing, and changing, become the better version of themselves. It's about this person that just keeps going and embracing their worst aspects and continuing to go down this same path despite warning from everyone, telling him to stop, telling him to back down, telling him no one else sees what he's seeing. He's just this, as we said, he doesn't believe in regrets, but he just keeps going. And there's something about a person like that, in particular when you have a guy like this that can be so unlikable, but have that charisma that just draws you to him at the same time. That's a delicate balance to behave in such an abrasive manner that's off-putting, but still be charming at the same time. And he's able to kind of like sit right on that line to be able to pull that off. And they set it up nicely, so despite this family not really being like victims in any sense, there's all sorts of shadiness going on with this family, but they make the bad guys seem so much more just vicious, evil, conniving, relentless, vile, that we can root for these less bad people to get revenge, to stop them from doing some of these even worse things. They set it up so that we can root for that to take place and happen, and have a series of moments of like satisfaction of like, you killed that person, you tried to kill that, you threatened that person, and we got to you. In particular with like the promises of revenge and specific acts, they find a way to like keep playing some of that out and stretching it out, all the way up until the end when you have these big payoffs for it. It's kind of, some of it, as I mentioned earlier, some of it is tough to, I don't know, some of it was a little bit difficult to follow, and some of it tough to know how to interpret certain things in the movie because there are pretty big cultural differences, and the movie obviously wasn't made for me directly. And so little things like their company's the Swastika Steel. And in America, in the West, a swastika is exclusively associated with Nazis, exclusively. And the movie references, no, ours is straight, theirs is tilted. But in the United States, like, it is just such a vile symbol to us that you can't, it doesn't associate with anything. There's no other uses for it besides Nazi. Anything even close to that Nazi, that's bad. Like, that's the worst of the worst. And so it's just, even as you're watching the movie, it's like, did they just say swastika? They did. They just said swastika. And then you're in kind of these early scenes and they're at this party and there's a little swastika right there. And it's like, yep, I thought I saw swastika earlier. Yep. Okay. This is different. And you start to realize, like, you would never, ever do that in a Hollywood movie. Could never do it. Even like, no, it's different. The symbol, the Nazis stole the symbol. They appropriated this symbol. They took it. It wasn't, they didn't invent it. They took it. But because it was just such a horrible thing, it has completely been tarnished to at least in the United States, it's tarnished. You would never be able to have a company with people we were rooting for have the swastika on their logo and just put it on a character and just go along with it, just have one kind of line down, like, no, ours is straight, not crooked. Couldn't do that. It was just interesting to me. And I didn't know, like, it was distracting because I was waiting for an explanation. I was wondering if there'd be some acknowledgement or I don't know what it means elsewhere. I am aware that it predates Nazis. I'm aware of that, but it's just so associated with them that I don't know what it means elsewhere. And so that was kind of fascinating. Little things like that stand out to me of just when you watch a movie that's designed for people in a different cultural context and the assumptions in the society and what symbols mean and what the implications are of certain actions, it just plays very differently. That's fascinating. That's one of the reasons I've really been enjoying kind of watch more non-Hollywood films this year, because you see stories told in such a specific, different manner that you see the world differently. But there's just a little, like, even later in the film, there's characters with multiple wives and things like that just very culturally different that are just they do not happen in the United States. Polygamy is just not a thing that goes on here in that fashion at all. Even doing it with like villains or anything like it just doesn't happen. And so just a lot of things like that it played differently. And so I didn't know if that was, I don't know how common some of the things are. I don't know what a swastika means. I don't know how it plays or how it's interpreted. And so it's fascinating me. So lingering a little bit because it just stuck out so much to me. Some of these specific things that are so different from how Hollywood would tell a story like this, or what imagery, what symbols, what logos, what behaviors characters take part in, how it's interpreted. On more kind of overt negatives, it is very long. It is a very long movie, 3 hours and 20 minutes. And I mean, it's dense. I mean, there's all kind of characters and flashbacks. We're moving all around. I don't know that it needed to be this long. Just, every scene plays pretty long. Even as I mentioned, action sequences, these massive, visceral, cool action sequences. But they're like, when you do one, it's epic and long, but there's actually not very many action sequences in the film. It's just a super long one. You go, all right, we could have tightened the one that we did have and add another one in the middle somewhere to kind of pace our action out a little bit more, and just tighten some of these scenes up, because it's a very long movie, and I don't know that it had 3 hours and 3.5 hours of plot. I guess I would say that given how long the movie is, our villains felt very underdeveloped, where it takes a while before we start to reveal who's behind all of this. And there's a little bit of like, who's that guy that did that thing? Who's that guy on that phone? And so then we keep delaying really revealing who's behind everything. And when you do, it has kind of these like layers, implications to all of it. And then we cut back to our main guy and get into his marital issues and affairs and scheming and stuff. But like, we finally learn who the villains are. Okay. And then we cut back for a long time until basically we get to the final showdown. So we get this one sequence really showing us who they are, and then the end of it, and then we tease post-credit scene, future things. And if the movie was shorter, I could forgive that a little bit more, but when you have a runtime this long, you could have given our villains more time to, and when you have these ties to their past, and even like all of these details about the guy can't talk, and his brother interprets for him, and multiple wives, and got this one pregnant, and there's so much nuance and detail to them. It's not that they're paper thin. It's not that they're just like these cardboard cutout villains that just show up. When we meet them, you have all these specific things, and you go, oh, that's interesting, and then we don't see them again until a final fight. And so there's so much more they could have explored there, or found some way to intertwine them into the plot earlier in a different context, and so it would feel like we knew them better. I wish we had something like that. So, overall, I'm still processing what I thought about it, because it's more of a gangster film. It's a mob film, revenge, like it's more akin in a sense to, The Godfather, Scarface, than to a more straightforward action film or a spy film like many of the other Indian films that I've seen. And so I'm just kind of processing a little bit, what did I fully think about it? But I was intrigued by it. The action was cool. The lead character was compelling. And so, a lot to enjoy here. I think I'm going to do a ranking of the 2023 Indian films that I watched this year, and I'm still like contemplating in my mind what that ranking looks like. But I've enjoyed all the films that I have seen, so take that as you will. Let me know what you guys thought down below in the comments section. You can check out my other Indian reviews right over there. Also, a couple rankings in there, the Lokesh verse as well as the Spy universe. Both of them ranked over there. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.